Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
The last thing they want to do is feel little. And when you've got to go to bed at 7 o'clock and all your friends are staying up until 8, you kind of feel pretty little, right?
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
G'day, it's Dr. Justin Coulson, the founder of happyfamilies.com.au. I'm here with Kylie, my wife and mum to our 6 baby girls. Well, they're not babies, but they're always going to be our babies. Kylie, a couple of things have happened that we need to talk about. First one, just a quick announcement. Got an email via podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Somebody's been listening closely to our conversations lately and noticing that I've had an interesting run of luck. Corey sent through an email, podcast at happyfamilies.com.au, and said, been listening to your parenting tips and here's what I've learned. Number 1, don't go out late. It makes you a bad parent. Number 2, don't let the kids run the bath unsupervised. For those who didn't catch our Noah's Ark edition, just go back a couple of Fridays and you know what that's all about. And number 3, between your bath and your roof, I hope that you're never involved in any building-related TV shows. Stay away from anything, really, is what Corey's saying. Corey, thanks for looking out for me. I really appreciate you. I mean, gosh, if someone wants to offer me a building-related TV show, I think I'd do it just so I could learn how to be safe. But I guess that's a story for another day. We've got a lot to talk about today, hun.
Well, you know, we were actually really slack last week. We forgot to mention that book club has started again.
Oh, so the background of this is that if you are a Happy Families member, you get access to book club once a term. We go through a book about parenting. At the moment, we're working through our ones, and we're up to my 5th of 6 books. We're going through 10 things every parent needs to know, and that's every Wednesday for 4 weeks. You did week 1 last week.
Well, I think that this has completely come about because I haven't actually read your books.
Yeah, that's a good.
And I think
that's right.
I think the reason you've put me in charge is because it's just so you can make sure that I actually know what you're talking about.
You're going to become a parenting expert by the end of this. Oh, and by the way, it's not too late. If you are a Happy Families member and you missed last week, you can jump on tomorrow night for week 2. All you've got to do is start to read along with 10 things every parent needs to know. You can grab it online at the Happy Family store. And if you don't have a copy, grab it from the library or buy one and it'll arrive. You don't have to have read it to be part of book club, right? I mean, just show up.
No, we've had a couple of people show up and they just were able to join in the conversation and glean from the things that other people had learnt.
Yeah, and the other thing to bear in mind as well is that if you're not a Happy Families member, but you like the sound of book club and all the other stuff that Happy Families members get, all you've got to do is jump onto happyfamilies.com.au and become a member. Anyway, that's the background of book club. Tomorrow night, week 2. Last week, week 1.
We talked a whole heap about mattering and belonging and being understood. And they were really, really awesome conversations that we had last week. And this week, we're going to be looking at something better than punishment and getting along with others. Sibling rivalry, I think, is going to come into play a little bit there.
So can I ask a question about last week? And this is not pre-scripted. I'm putting you on the spot here. But you said you had some really nice conversations about the importance of mattering and belonging. What was something that you heard, something that somebody contributed in book club that really stood out to you in terms of how they help their kids to feel like they matter and they belong?
A couple of the parents have acknowledged they live in Melbourne and they've gone back down into lockdown.
Yeah, shout out to everyone in Melbourne. Lockdown version 4.
Yeah, this is a really big deal and this is really, really hard on families. And so what they've noticed is that this time round, the kids are tired before they've even started. They're like, we know what this is about and we don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're stuck in a small confined space. Mum's trying to work and the kids are trying to do online learning and it's not working too well this time round. And so she kind of just shouted out and she said, guys, I need help because she said, I want to be responsive to my children, but I'm in the middle of work. You know, I'm on a Zoom meeting or doing other important things and I can't stop every time. And what I loved was how this little community of book club mums came together and said, you know, one of the things that we've done is when the kids come in and I can't talk to them, I just touch them. I squeeze their hand to acknowledge that I hear them, that I'm aware, but I can't do it right now. Another mum suggested that she's told her little kids to draw a picture of what they want to talk about so that it keeps it fresh in their mind. And then as soon as she's able to get off, that she takes the time to talk through the picture with them and they can discuss what they need to discuss. And I loved that everybody had, you know, ideas and things that had worked for them that could help this mum out.
And you don't have to be in a Victoria-wide lockdown to get benefit from that.
Yeah. So I really, really appreciated everybody's involvement.
Yeah, great stuff. So today we're going to talk about something that probably relates a bit to what you talked about last week and a bit to what you're talking about tomorrow night with Book Club. And that is a question that came through via podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. This one came from Brooke, and I'll read it because I know you've got a lot of ideas about it. Brooke has said, 10-year-olds, what time do they go to bed in your home? She's just like, can you tell me, am I like everyone else or are my kids a bit weird? My son goes to bed at 7 p.m. and is allowed to read until 7:30. He hears from his friends that they go to bed at 8 p.m. or later, and he wants the same. He needs to be up at 6:10 a.m. every day because school starts at 7:45, and where we are, he doesn't ever bounce out of bed. Grateful to hear from others. I'm torn between giving him a later bedtime and not wanting to deal with the extra tiredness just because his friends stay up.
Oh, the teenager. We had a conversation with Madonna King a little while ago about her book and this whole notion that 10 is the new teenager.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky stage because they're still little people, but they're not little people anymore, but they're not big people yet, and they want to be. They're just desperate, and then they're in this limbo space. It's such a hard age. It's a hard age to dress them. It's a hard age to navigate because they just want more autonomy, more independence, more responsibility, and they think that they're ready for it.
And the last thing they want to do is feel little. And when you've got to go to bed at 7 o'clock and all your friends are staying up until 8, you kind of feel pretty little, right?
Yeah.
So let's have a conversation about how we can help Brooke and what to do about getting bedtime right for our kids, regardless of whether they're 2 or 10 or even 18. We'll do that right after the break.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
Imagine a home where discipline got results without anyone having to feel bad or in trouble. The Do's and Don'ts of Discipline is a webinar to help parents set limits with love, compassion and humanity. Find it now at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we are hopefully going to answer Brooke's question.
Yeah, talking about bedtime and how to get the kids to bed on time and what on time actually is. 7 o'clock at night for a 7:30 lights out for a 10-year-old. Seem reasonable to you? What do you reckon? Should we actually give our opinion on this one or should we just talk about bedtime principles?
Yeah, I'm not going to give an opinion on that.
Come on.
I think that every household has their own stand on it. But one of the things that stood out from Book Club last week was a little quote, just a tiny little quote that you have tucked in nicely in one of the chapters. And it's by Dr. Stephen R. Covey. And he said the greatest human need is to be understood.
I love that.
And I think that at the heart of everything that Brooke's dealing with right now is a little 10-year-old who's not so little anymore, doesn't want to be considered little, who just needs to be understood.
So essentially, when it comes to negotiating or navigating bedtime with kids, it's important that we as parents recognise that ultimately it's up to us about what time the kids go to bed, but we need to kind of understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, so would the 3 E's work here?
Yeah, I think that they would. Explore what's going on in their world. Why does it matter to you what time you go to bed? Why do you want to stay up? What are all of your friends doing? What's the amazing stuff that's happening between 7:30 and 8 p.m. that all of your friends are getting to do that you're not getting to do? Like, what's really going to be the difference? And kind of explore their world. Explain what you expect and what your concerns are. Try and do it briefly. And then empower them. Say, okay, so I get what's going on for you, but you also know what I expect. How are we going to figure this out together? And a 10-year-old's big enough to work this out with you.
So we've obviously had to negotiate this particular dynamic in our house
6 times.
No, more than 6, because it's not just once for each child.
It's ongoing. It's never
each
ending.
year it's like, okay, I need an extra 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bigger person now and I should be allowed to. But I think that one of the things that has really helped in our discussions is really kind of nutting out the science of sleep. What does your body actually need so that you can function and be a healthy human being?
So when we have a look at what sleep researchers have discovered, for our children who are aged somewhere in those preschool years, late toddler, early preschool years, they probably need about 12 hours of sleep a night.
I think I might still be a preschooler.
Sometimes I feel like that too.
Who decided that I only need 8 hours?
They need about 12 hours. Once they get into primary school, those lower primary school years, it probably drops to about 11. And once they get into the higher primary school years, probably something closer to 10. Once they're in high school, we're probably looking at around about 9.5 8.5 hours. And by the time they get to their late teens, something about 9, and adults on average need about 8. Thing is, these are averages, right? So that doesn't necessarily help every single parent because not every child is average. We have one daughter who, she just doesn't go to sleep. She's only 14. She's not tired until about 10 o'clock. And we really want her to go to bed earlier, but she wakes up every morning on time, and most of the time she's actually not grumpy. She gets along really well with everyone and does it.
You just don't talk to her.
Well, no,
don't talk to her. Just
let her go through the wake up time.
Wake up slowly, yes.
So we've really got to explore what's going on in their world. Yes, the science matters, but I know some adults who desperately need 9 hours a night, and I know some who can get by on about 7 a night. Everybody's different. For me, I really like my 8 hours.
Well, I think that the science gives us a good kind of a place to start.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I look at the fact that there's a very early start for this particular child, it might be good kind of pacing backwards and going, okay, so if you need to get up at 6 a.m. every morning because we've got to get out the door by 6:45, what time would you need to go to bed?
Yeah, let's count back the 10 hours.
Yeah, so that you've had your 10 hours. Okay, so it would seem that to get 10 or 11 hours, we're going to need to go to bed somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock at night. Right now we're going to bed at 7 for a 7:30 lights out, but he's asking for an extension on that. So why not do an experiment?
Yeah, according to the science, 10 hours is probably about right for a child that age. Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens.
Let's try it for a week and let's come back next week and talk about what we noticed. Were you grumpier? Did you have a hard time getting through school? How did you feel when you woke up? All of these kinds of questions that explore. And if you can have the conversation at the front end of it and help them to feel like they're a part, they're a collaborator in the process, they actually have some autonomy in this decision, then hopefully at the other end, they will have the ability to be introspective and see the things that have taken place.
You're pretty good at this. There's a couple of other things that I would add that may be useful. The first one is that it's really important that our children aren't trying to be sneaky. Like, it's great that we've got a 10-year-old here who's having the conversation rather than pretending to be asleep and then sneaking the torch under the covers and reading until 11 o'clock at night, or sneaking out into the lounge room so that they can gorge on all of the...
Not that we've had any experience with these at all.
On all of the ice cream that we've bought that the kids aren't supposed to be eating. Like, it's really nice that that's happening. I want to point to some science as well. It doesn't happen so much with our little kids, but as they get bigger and move into those later tween and teen years, which is what we're talking about with this particular child of Brooks, the body produces melatonin, which is, at least in part, our sleep hormone. It's the thing that makes you start to nod off. That hormone doesn't really start to be produced until about an hour, maybe even as much as 2 hours later, once kids get into the teen years. So we should expect that from about the age of 10 or 12, they are going to start pushing their bedtime back naturally, because they're just not tired. The other thing to remember is with children and adolescents, and particularly teenagers, the melatonin production doesn't stop overnight. It just keeps on going and going and going. Whereas with us as adults, it actually slows down during the night and ultimately ceases. So we wake up and we're ready to go. They wake up and they're groggy because their body's still producing melatonin while they're sleeping. So that can sort of explain why our 14-year-old or maybe this 10-year-old wake up a little bit grumpy in the morning, because their body keeps producing that sleep hormone while they're out to it.
So is there any other science that might help Brooke out at the moment? So
everyone knows about sleep hygiene. That is, kids should be going to bed in a room that's appropriately dark and appropriately warm or cool. It needs to be the right temperature and appropriately quiet. That's all the really important sleep hygiene stuff. But there's one other really cool science fact. Over the last few years, scientists have discovered that when it comes to children going to bed, if we can keep their bedtime consistent, within about 30 minutes of their bedtime, they get better quality sleep and they feel more rested. So if bedtime is, let's say, 8 p.m., they need to be going to bed between 7:45 and 8:15 every single night. You don't want too much variation in bedtimes. That's what actually messes the kids up and reduces their well-being.
Well, I think one of the great things that Brooke is doing is she's allowing him to have this reading time.
Yeah, wind down.
It's a really good way to wind down.
Especially so long as it's not on an iPad. We want to use real books, not screens, right before bed.
So this is a really great thing that she's doing. And so maybe instead of him going to bed at 7 o'clock, he could possibly go to bed at 7:15 and he can read for a little bit longer than he would normally read for. And you actually might see that he'll start to fall asleep on his own without even trying.
Yeah, love it. We hope, Brooke, that this has been helpful for you and every other parent who's battling bedtimes with kids who are older than toddlers, because that's a totally different conversation. Thanks so much for sending us an email, podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. If you have enjoyed the podcast, we love it when you leave 5-star ratings and reviews at Apple Podcasts. Please send those ratings and reviews through so that more people can find out about the podcast and make their families happier. And we really appreciate the work of Justin Rulon from Bridge Media and Craig Bruce, our executive producer. They make the podcast sound like it sounds, and we're grateful for their work. If you'd like more information about becoming a Happy Families member and joining Kylie tomorrow night for Book Club Round 2 on 10 things every parent needs to know, jump online, happyfamilies.com.au, and become a member today.